Coming up, the Nets fall short of two miraculous comebacks and now start 0-3 on the year. I'll tell you why they could be trending towards a historically bad start right now.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And on today's show, I'm going to be recapping the Nets' pair of comeback losses this weekend. I'll dive into why Brooklyn's defeats, despite Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. scoring explosions, are a telling sign for their tank outlook. And the Nets fell 131-124 to the Cavaliers on Friday in their home opener and 118-107 to the Spurs on Sunday in San Antonio. In two games that featured really miraculous comebacks, and I think might inspire some hope amongst people that, hey, these are two good teams, and Nets were right in it until the end. They might be able to compete with some of these teams in the league. It might not be as bad as we thought. And I'm actually going the other direction. I think that these losses are a pretty telling sign that the Nets could be bound for a historically bad start. And the reason that I came away to that conclusion was the Nets got pretty elite offensive performances from their top two players, Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr., both of them in that Cavs game. And then during the Spurs game, Cam Thomas went off and really had an elite scoring game. And still, the Nets were not able to close it out. And in that Cavs game, even getting those elite performances from CT and MPJ, it never really felt like they had the horses to get to the finish. And it never really felt like they were going to get over the hump. Even when they went ahead in the Spurs game, it never really felt like they were going to close it out. And I think that you look at this Nets team, there's two ways that this team is going to compete in games. One is get offensive explosions from Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr., like we said, or they get insane shooting nights collectively where they just shoot themselves into games. And I think some nights you may get both of those things, like in this Cavs game. Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas both played really well. The Nets shot, I think, 42% from three on over 40 attempts. So that's a pretty elite shooting night. This Spurs game, it was just Cam Thomas going off. The Nets didn't shoot as well. They jacked up 53s. But I just think the amount of nights that you're going to get Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. just exploding offensively and the supporting cast shooting at a really high level, I think those are going to be few and far between. And we got one of those in this Cavs game, and the Nets still lost and never really felt like they were going to win that game. So I think you look at this Nets schedule and the way that, this is trending, I'm not sure that, you look at the first 20 games, there might be two more games in these next 17 games getting up to 20 on the schedule. There might be two games where they're favored or the spread is even close. You look at the Wizards matchup, you look at the Hornets matchup. Could they squeak out a few wins here and there outside of those games? Sure, but I don't think that it would be a shock, if the Nets start out 2-18 or 3-17. I think that's very realistic. And I might say that that's even a likely outcome at this point with the way that this is trending. And that might be odd after they came back against these teams, but I just do not think that the way that they're playing is sustainable. I mean, you look at this Nets team, Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. are obviously carrying the load offensively. Outside of those two guys, you look at the other players who can dribble, who are backcourt players, who can create their own shot or create shots for others off the bounce. You have Yegor Dioman, Ben Saraf, Nolan Traore. Maybe you could throw Tyrese Martin in there as the ball handlers. Danny Wolf, once he gets healthy. Those are the guys who can dribble perceivably outside of Cam Thomas. And are any of those guys going to be creating shots at a high level? Are any of those guys driving offense or look like they're fit to drive offense right now? Yegor Dioman and Ben Saraf don't look like that in any regard. Yegor looks like he could shoot from the outside. We're going to get to him more later. Ben Saraf, he'll have flashes here and there, but he's not a player who's ready to drive offense. Nolan Traore isn't even getting any run. Tyrese Martin, he can do something once in a while. We haven't seen Danny Wolf yet. You look at outside of Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr., and this team just doesn't have the horses, it seems like, offensively to keep them in games if those guys aren't going off. I mean, you talk about Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr.'s ability to have these scoring explosions, and you might have that. I said the second way that they might stay in games is having these insane shooting variance nights. And I'm just not sure how likely that is. Like, I do not think this team is going to be a high-level shooting team. First, they have 2 point guards in Ben Saraf and Nolan Traore who really can't shoot whatsoever. So that's an inhibitor right there. And then you look at the wing group, like, this isn't exactly a group of elite wing shooters. Like, Zaire Williams is shooting better right now. He's a 32% three-point shooter for his career. Obviously, like, the arrow is pointing up in that regard, but I wouldn't say he's like an elite shooter. Terrence Mann, good shooter throughout his career. I don't think he's an elite shooter, not a very versatile, like, movement shooter type guy. Jalen Wilson, Tyrese Martin, average shooters. Like, I just don't think that it's like elite in that regard from any, respect. And then you have Nick Claxton, you have obviously Day'Ron Sharpe, non-shooters in the front court. Like, the lack of ball handling, and I think like the lack of elite shooting on this team. Like, you have Michael Porter Jr., you have Cam Thomas. I just think offensively, it's going to be a struggle a lot of games. Like, we saw it against Charlotte. The nights where Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. don't have it, they're not going to have the shot creation outside of that. Even the nights where they do have it, they're not going to have the supporting shot creation. A lot of the time, they won't have the three-point shooting. I just think it's going to be really tough offensively. And then you get into the defense. Like, the Nets have not been able to defend through 3 games whatsoever. Like, they have stretches. They held the Spurs to 19 points during the third quarter. They'll have stretches where they can do it. But, they're letting up like 60-plus points, 60, 70 points in the first half of each one of these games. Do I think it's going to be that bad all the time? No, but I'm just not sure that they have the personnel. You look at the point of attack defenders, you look at the wing defenders. I just don't think that they have the personnel to do a lot of what Jordy wants to do at a high level for extended stretches, especially when you have players like Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. sharing the floor with rookies like Yegor Dioman, like Ben Saraf, guys who are inexperienced. It's very hard to do the things that Jordy wants to do offensively. And when you have the offensive struggles that they're going to have a lot of nights, that's going to bleed into defensive struggles because you're not able to get the defense set. You have turnovers. You have the other team playing in transition. I just think there's not going to be a ton of complementary basketball on either end of the floor. And I think that ultimately is going to lead to a really difficult start for this Nets team. And I think some people, that might be really bleak, but some people might be happy for it. I mean, there are like tank supporters, obviously, within the fan base. And we'll see if the Nets get off to a 2-18, 3-17, 4-16 start, something along those lines. That's a far cry from what they did last year when they were 9-11 to start the year. And they might be in a much better position to secure these top lottery odds than they were last season. I would say that is definitely the direction that this is trending. But we got scoring explosions from Cam Thomas in both of these games, and it was really entertaining. Despite the Nets losing, I think that fans got entertaining things in both of these games. It was kind of like the best of both worlds. You got the game where the Nets had this spirited comeback. Yegor Dioman showed some stuff against the Cavs. Cam Thomas played elite from a scoring perspective in this Spurs game, and it was really like a riveting comeback, but then the Nets fall just short. So you have the fight, kind of like them actually going out and playing hard for a large portion of the game, but then falling just short. And that might be maddening to some people, and some people might say that that's the perfect way for some of these games to play out for a Nets team that really this season is all about their draft position and development. But Cam Thomas was a huge part of what kept the Nets in these games. But despite watching these Cam Thomas scoring explosions, I can't shake this feeling that the way that the Nets are playing, the position that they put him in, is ultimately not going to bode well for his development. And I do not think that it is a sustainable way to play. So I'll dive into all that, why I feel that way, when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. But before that, want to tell you about our friends over at Monarch Money. Guys, let's be honest. Most of us can't even name all our financial accounts, let alone what we're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Guys, Monarch helps you organize all your accounts, track your spending, and get a better handle on your investments without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. I love that I can review everything with my partners, see our shared goals, and make better financial decisions together. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where my money is going and how to make it work harder for me. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, Getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is go cheer on your team. Guys, that's where Game Time comes in. The app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. Guys, you can use Game Time to grab seats for any NBA matchup, and it couldn't be simpler. You'll have great seats in minutes. You can see what you pay. That's it. What you see is what you pay. No hidden fees at checkout. Plus, you can see exactly what your seat view looks like before you buy the ticket using their in-app seat view feature. And their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, and you save big. You can even find NBA tickets for under $25. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Coming back from the break on today's Locked On Nets podcast, talking about a pair of Nets losses over the weekend, failed comebacks, during which Cam Thomas exploded from an offensive perspective. You look at CT, he had 33 points against Cleveland, 33 points, 9 assists, 12 of 24 from the field, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. And then in his Spurs game on Sunday, he had 40 points, 10th career 40-point game, 2 rebounds, no assists, though, 11 of 25 from the field, 5 of 12 from 3, and a perfect 13 of 13 from the free throw line. And I think a lot of people came away from this game, and there was a lot of headlines after this game against the Spurs in terms of Cam Thomas's performance. Obviously, you have 40 points, you have 0 assists, and that is going to get a lot of clicks. And there's been a little bit of a polarization, a little bit of a divide amongst people about how they feel about performances from Cam like this. And I come away from this game, and I put out a tweet as this game was happening. Cam Thomas, I said, this is the epitome of a Cam Thomas game. He has 40 points. He has no assists. There's a lot of offensive possessions that are just ending in him hitting ridiculous shots. And I think some people got, offended by that. They took that as, a shot at Cam, a negative. I didn't really see it as that way. I just see it as the facts. Like, to me, that is just the truth of this Cam Thomas performance against the Spurs. This was the epitome of Cam Thomas. It was him scoring at an extremely high level, and it was him keeping this Nets team in a game. But the playmaking, frankly, was not at a high level, and the Nets ultimately were not able to get over the hump. And that is something that we've seen from Cam Thomas a lot of the time. And I'm not saying that as a shot towards him. I actually think that my whole takeaway from this is I don't think that the position that Cam has been put in with this Nets team is something that is going to bode well for his development. And that's a stance that I've had since last season, entering this year, and especially this year with the rookies that the Nets have put around Cam, because Cam is going to have a lot of these games where he's looking around and he's saying, the best offense for us, the best way for us to play is for me to go get mine and for me to try to score and carry the load for this team to the up-temp degree. And do I necessarily think that he's wrong? A lot of the time, he's going to be right. That is going to be right. But is that a way of playing that is going to benefit Cam long-term? Is it a way that he's going to play on a contending team long-term if he gets into that position? No. Like, that's just not the way that Cam is going to be playing. You look at these last couple games, he's at near 40% usage in this game. And this Spurs game in particular, 40 points, 0 assists, elite scoring. The playmaking, I do not think was at an elite level. And, he kept the Nets in this game. Like, I'm not saying that, like, this is any knock on Cam. Like, Cam had a broken nose going into this game. He got his face split open, in the first half of this game, went to the locker room, got like 3 stitches, he said, came back and really continued to try to will the Nets back into this game. The guy is playing his butt off. He's a warrior. He's going out and trying to do all these things for his team. But I just don't think that this is like a sustainable style of basketball to play. Like, you look at this game against the Spurs, 40 points, 0 assists. I went through all of the possessions, and Cam had around 8 potential assists roughly in this game, 8 potential assists while posting a near 40% usage rate. And those 8 potential assists, like, a lot of them are just like last resort passes where Cam's kicking out to the wing. He had a few, like 2 or 3 maybe high-level kickouts, didn't generate any looks for the rim for anyone else. And obviously, Victor Wembanyama being down low plays a part in that. But I don't think this is his fault. Like, there's been times in the past where Cam hasn't been playmaking, he hasn't been passing, and part of that is his fault. But I'd say now he's in a position where he has a justified reason to look around and say the best way for us to compete is for me to try to go get mine and for me to try to score. Is that always going to be true with this roster? No. but a lot of the times it is going to be. And that ultimately, I think, is a net negative for his development. Because if you look at Cam trying to get on a good team, a contending team, whether that's the Nets or whether that's any other team, whatever team signs him the coming off season or trades for him this season, if he does get moved, like, he's not going to be playing like this. He's not going to be posting 35 to 40% usage rates. Like, that's just not how it's going to go. He's not that level of player. And that's not a shot at Cam. There's so few players throughout the NBA who are that level of players. Like, we're talking about the SGAs, the Giannis's, the Jokic's, whoever else you want to say. Like, Cam is just not that level of guy. And that's not a shot. Like, you have to be one of the most gifted, not just like right now, you have to be a generational, like all-time type player to justify putting up that type of usage rate. And it's just not something that Cam's going to do. And I feel right now he might get into, it's just, I don't know if this is necessarily going to bring the best out of him long-term for his development. He might get into situations where he has some nights where he's passing and he's doing some good things from an assist perspective. He had 9 assists in this Cavs game, but then I think there's going to be a lot of nights where Cam is, looking to get his, like he was in this Spurs game. There isn't a ton of high-level playmaking. There's a lot of standing and watching for everyone else, and I don't think that is the way that, a lot of teams are going to play throughout the league. Like, that's just not the way that basketball is being played. And it's not the way, especially, that it's being played if you aren't one of these elite guys like an SGA, like a Giannis, like, whoever you want to say. So I think it's a tough position for Cam to be in. I do think, to a certain extent, it seems like he relishes it. He obviously loves going out there and, getting buckets and doing all of these things. But I just think that it's drifting further away from, the role that Cam is going to be playing for a contending team. That's not what he's being asked to do right now. And I ultimately don't think that is a positive for his development long term. And ultimately, it probably doesn't make that much of a difference for the Nets, because I don't think that, he's going to be a player who's on this team beyond this season. But for him, looking to try to get him to kind of make some of the requisite changes that people have been talking about to his game in terms of the playmaking, in terms of the defense, it's tough for him to do that, or it's tough to expect him to do that when you're, surrounding him with zero scorers, when it seems like the best offensive move is for him to try to go get his, and in turn, probably not have a lot of energy on the defensive end. I just don't think it is a net positive for his development overall. And I think that it's going to probably devolve into that a lot of these nights for this Nets team, given what the situation is around Cam. So we'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. But ultimately, I think that this Spurs game was the epitome of a Cam Thomas game from what we've seen historically. And I don't think that necessarily is a positive, or that is a mold that he's going to fit into for a good team down the line if he's trying to play on one of these contending teams. So we'll see how it plays out. But we also had the Nets rookies and their limitations probably playing into a lot of why Cam is looking to have to get his in a lot of these games and will moving forward. So what are those limitations? How did Yegor Dioman and Ben Surratt fare in these 2 games over the weekend? I'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at the bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Brooklyn's pair of failed comebacks over the weekend. And I want to close it out talking about Yegor Dioman and Ben Surratt, because there were some positives, there were some growing pains. Let's start with the positive. Yegor Dioman, in this game against the Cavaliers, had a really extended stretch of good play in the first clutch minutes of his career. Yegor was scoreless through 3 quarters of that Cavs game, and he finished the game with 9 points. He shot 3 of 4 on threes in the fourth quarter. He had a really big assist to Zaire Williams for a 3. He hit a 3 with around 3 minutes left, I think it was, with the Nets down by 4 to cut it to 1, and it was just an explosion in Barclays Center for the first clutch shot of Yegor's career. And I don't think that any of that can be thrown out the window. Like Yegor's ability to produce in the clutch, from a playmaking perspective on a couple of plays, also from a 3-point shooting perspective, and have the stones to hit some of the shots and make some of the plays he did against that Cavs team. That's an overall positive for his mindset, his confidence, all those things along those lines. But if we're looking at Yegor, it's evident right now that he's extremely limited as an offensive player. And these are things that we knew. We saw it at Summer League. We saw it in the first game against Toronto. We saw it in the preseason game against Toronto. We saw it against Charlotte. And these last two games, it's evident. We're 3 games in, and Yegor is still yet to attempt a 2-point field goal. And that is pretty crazy, frankly. And I'm going to do, an episode probably at length with Lucas Kaplan talking about this coming week. But Yegor is shooting at a high level from 3. I think he's probably around 50% from 3, through all these games. He was 1 of 5 against San Antonio, but did hit a big one in the fourth quarter to cut the lead to 1 for the Spurs, which is another testament to the clutch shot making that he's displayed thus far. But it's just all threes. Like, he's just a spot-up shooter. That's all he's doing right now. Initiating offense against the Cavs and also against the Spurs has been a real struggle. Like we saw against the Spurs, he had several turnovers. He had, turnovers at the point of attack in the half court. He had turnovers in the back court with Dylan Harper pressing up into him. Initiating offense has been a big struggle. And outside of that, he's just not getting downhill. And in the rare moments that he does get downhill, he's not looking to shoot. He's getting near the paint, he's stopping, and he's looking for anywhere to throw the ball. It's almost like, what we saw from Ben Simmons in terms of a lot of, his lack of confidence going to the basket when he was with the Nets. So the difference is that Yegor Dioman is shooting the ball at an extremely high level, which is something that Ben Simmons obviously could never do from 3 throughout his career. So Yegor, there's glaring limitations right now. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see if it results in a position change. It's going to be interesting to see whether the Nets ultimately decide to slide him to the wing or whether they continue to just give him these extended ball handler reps throughout the season and let him play through it. I lean towards the latter. I think they'll do both, but I think that pulling the ripcord and not letting Yegor work through some of these growing pains and try to initiate offense and gain more comfort with it throughout the year progresses would be a short-sighted move, in my opinion. Like, you're already seeing people on Nets Twitter say, post these clips of Yegor getting ripped in the backcourt or struggling to initiate in the half court and saying he's a wing, not a point guard. Like, it's clear. Like, we're 3 games into his pro career, okay? Like, these are things, he's 19 years old. These are things that are going to take years to develop. So any fans that want them to just throw him to the wing and say he's a wing, might he be a wing long-term? Maybe, but not to give him a chance to develop and try to, improve those other aspects of his game in terms of the ball handling, in terms of the offensive initiation. That would just be an extremely short-sighted and frankly stupid move to make at this point, because I said it, Yegor looks like a good 3-point shooter right now. That is an immense positive, because the questions about Yegor's shooting were a lot of questions, relating to whether he could be a total bust with this Nets pick. If he's a good shooter, I've said I'm confident that he's going to have a high floor in the NBA because he has size. He should, if he can fill out, have at least some defensive versatility. And he does have at least some, off the dribble juice, and he does have elite playmaking ability when presented with advantages that will bode well to give him a high floor. But the ceiling is going to depend on his development as a ball handler, his ability to do some of these things off the dribble, be somewhat of an advantage creator. And if you just cut that out from him and you say you're just going to be a wing, you relegate him to that role, that's just not a positive for his development. You're limiting the overall upside because you're limiting the reps and the ability for him to gain comfort and improve in some of these things. So he's 19 years old. We're 3 games into his career, and I think that there's going to be a lot of ugly moments throughout this season, but that's what this season is about. It's about the ugly moments. It's about letting Yegor and these other rookies play through some of those things and gain comfort. So we'll see how that plays out. But Ben Saraf, touching on him, there was obviously a lot of buzz about Saraf in the preseason. He has shown some flashes, but I think overall you're seeing a lot of the limitations that he had during these 2 games. Against Cleveland, he had 2 points, 1 assist. He was 1 of 2 from the field. He had a nice drive and dunk, but other than that, didn't really do much in that game. And then in this Spurs game, he had no points, scoreless, 1 rebound, 5 assists. He was 0 of 5 from the field and 0 of 3 from 3. And I think you do see like some of the flashes of what Ben can do as a ball handler. You're seeing some good passes. He's able to get in the lane. He's able to probe and try to get to the basket, score at the rim and from the mid-range. Those are positives, but the 3-point shooting is a huge limitation at this point in terms of him being an on-the-ball player and an off-the-ball player. When he's off the ball, the lanes are just constricted because teams do not really respect him as a 3-point shooter. And when he's on the ball, a lot of teams are working under screens. A lot of teams are giving him a lot of space. And I had worries about whether that was going to make it difficult for him to create advantages in some of these other regards. And I think that it definitely would. That was, that went without saying. I think it was just how much would it limit some of the other things that he can do? And would he be willing to take these threes and do some of those things, to try to make defenses respect him? And up to this point, like, he's taken some catch and shoot threes. The off the dribble threes haven't really been there, but it's going to be a work in progress for Ben. Like, he showed promise in training camp and during the preseason. I think a lot of those flashes were real. You know, the 11 assist game, the flashes that he has as a playmaker, being able to get to the rim, the things that he can do, like, he will be able to continue to do those. But with that, there's going to be nights like this where the looks that he is able to generate towards the rim or in the mid-range, he's not able to convert on. And then the three-point shooting limitations make it so he's not really able to have an impact on or off the ball because teams aren't respecting him. So we'll see if that three-point shooting comes along at all as the year progresses. But that is the red flag with his game right now, the glaring red flag. And until it starts to improve a little bit, there's going to be a lot of nights where it's going to be difficult for Ben and this Nets offense as a whole to produce. But that's all I have for today's episode of Locked On Nets. The Nets play on Monday in Houston, and they're going to come home for some matchups next week. So I'll have coverage of all that. But if you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, take a second, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you can do to engage is much appreciated. We got the back-to-back against the Rockets on Monday. Then the Nets are going to come home. Some of these Nets rookies may get healthy and insert themselves into the lineup. Yegor Djoman and Ben Surratt also going to continue to get reps. Cam Thomas, Michael Porter Jr. are going to try to carry the load. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.